Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today I have the opportunity to work on a classic, and even though I've done a lot of Mitchells, I haven't done this one, I don't believe, or if I have done it, it's been a while. This is the Mitchell 307. This is the right-handed version of the 306, and I'm going to show you today how to take this reel apart, how to service it, and how to keep it running for a long time to come. This is a flea market find from Scott out in Southern California. It's a beautiful example of the reel. There's very few paint nicks or scratches. Cosmetically, it's standing up pretty well. There's some film on here that'll clean up. There's a little ding here that happens from time to time. But I would say this is a good survivor overall and a good example of well, how to work on this reel and also how to work on the Mitchell 306, even though the 306 is the left-handed version. If you can think mirror image, so what you'll see on one side will be on the opposite side when we go to do a 306. The rest of the principles are essentially the same. The Mitchell numbering sequences generally said if the reel has an odd number, in this case 307, it's going to have a right-hand drive. If it has an even number, it's going to have a left-hand drive. So when you look at a reel like this one, which is the Mitchell 300A, the drive is going to be on the left-hand side. And if you found the 301, it would be that reel in the right side. Well, let's take this apart. Let's get it cleaned up and let's get it back to Scott. One of the things I always find interesting about the 306 is that drag system. It's got very small drags for a relatively large reel. Well, you can remove the spool by pushing in on the button and pulling out on it. This one says that even though it's pretty clean on the outside, whoever took the opportunity to clean the outside didn't bother to clean the inside here because, well, I don't know if that's flea market dust or if it's sand and maybe dropped in the ocean. You never do know, right? But I guess you can always speculate on that. And what I'm going to do is just take a moment here to clean that. While I take a moment to clean that little piece there, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel. If you like the art of reel repair, if you'd like to learn about fishing reels, about the manufacturers, the time frames, how they're made, what makes them different from each other, then that's what I try and cover in my channel. But most importantly of all, the channel is named Second Chance Tackle for a reason. I try to give the reels a second chance, and I try to teach you how to do it yourself. You know, a lot of these reels that we work on, they're not that expensive. You can find them in flea markets for $15, $20. If you take it to a professional, have it serviced, well, it might put it out at a price range of what the value of it is. So if I can teach you how to do it yourself so that you can keep it running and not incur a lot of expense, well, double benefits, right? There you go. All right, we're going to take the handle off next, and you want to do that before you do too much more because it is a screw-in handle, and as you start to remove some pieces and parts, you may not be able to break the hold of that handle. So take that off right now. I'm going to put that into a parts tray. All of the pieces I take off, I put into a parts tray. It's an essential place for me to locate them. And you don't have to put the spool into there. You're probably not going to lose the spool, although I probably have lost one somewhere along the line. That's big enough, but as you get into some of the smaller pieces and parts, you're going to want to do that. Next up, we have a single screw that's holding on the side plate. I like to match this slot on the spool to the screwdriver. This is an older Craftsman screwdriver, but it's got that very big key to it. This reel was actually designed so that you could service the reel in the field. You could use a coin rather than the screwdriver to actually remove this cover and also to remove the rotor, and we'll show you that in a moment. And if you had a coin and something went wrong on your fishing trip, well, you didn't need to bring a whole bunch of tools along. You can pretty much service it with those two nickels or dimes or whatever it is that you had that you're using. Clean up the inside, and we're seeing why this one is on the lower end of performance, and that's because, well, it's just dried grease. And this happens particularly in older reels. You can just see this will come out in just a chunk, but it happens in older reels that haven't been serviced for a while. And when you go to a flea market, well, what are you finding? You're finding something that somebody no longer wants. Well, how does a reel become no longer wants? Is that good English? I don't know. No longer wanted. Well, typically it's been sitting in somebody's storage for a while, and particularly with these reels, the older greases dry out. And when they dry out, they clog the mechanism. When they clog the mechanism, well, it's just not working very well in that regard. There is a double pin that's holding the axle shaft into this crosswind block. You want to remove that. Then you can remove the axle shaft. It's got some dirt and some tarnish on it, but it came out easy enough. And we'll remove that crosswind block. And you can see again, there's all dried greases and the like on there. Use a penetrating oil as a solvent if you like. Just good old-fashioned cleaning. I just got a note from one of the channel viewers who said that they were encouraged by one of the videos and they started taking it apart and followed my instructions and cleaned it all up, and it's running like a charm, and couldn't make me more happy to hear that. A lot of comments that I used to get, aren't you afraid that you're going to lose business by showing people how to do it themselves? And quite honestly, I can't service all the reels in the world. I don't want to service all the reels in the world. And, well, I just get a joy out of hearing that folks have been doing it themselves and that the video in some way has helped them. Trying to pass along that information. So, there you go. All right. This is a track for what's called a planetary gear. So when you do a Mitchell like this, I'll make sure you get the old greases out. But this one does not have a simple up and down mechanism here that just drives it up and down like so many modern reels. This one is actually going to stagger the way that the spool rides up and down on that axle shaft. We'll show it to you when we go and put it back together again. But I did want to clean that off. And inside that we have the oscillation gear, and you can see that even the hole in the gear is offset, and the stud for the oscillation is offset. So as that runs around in the track, it's going to give you a different mode of retrieve. Before you take the main gear out, you want to make sure that the anti-reverse dog is disengaged. So move it down, make sure that the reel spins both ways. It's not terrible on the way out, but I've seen it where they catch on the click mechanism on the back of this drive. And when they catch, it pulls that dog out and the spring. Now we'll show you the setup if that happened to occur to you. We'll show you the setup on how to reset that dog there. All right, you can't pull the main gear out now. That pinion gear is in the way, so let's show you how to get the pinion gear out. Again, another coin slot right here. I'm going to use a screwdriver, but you could use a coin, and it's a plastic nut that's holding it in. And once you break it, you can take that off by using your finger. Underneath, be very careful with this one. When you remove that rotor, there is a keyway that goes right in here, and it sits in this pinion slot or rotor slot, pinion gear slot, I guess. And if you pull that out and that pops, it gets to be a fairly expensive proposition to go replace that. They're rare, and sellers are getting $10, $15 for that kind of thing. This is the piece I'm talking about right here. It's a T-shaped piece. And before I go any further when I do these reels, the first thing I do is grab that piece. I'll show it to you here. It's a very small piece of metal, and that goes right into my parts tray so that I know where that is when the time comes to replace. Next up then, we want to lubricate all of the pieces, and we want to make sure this bowl gets clean. So that actually the penetrating oil is going to do two things here. It's going to act as a lubricant. That's going to help me clean that inner bowl. So I use the basics. I use just the penetrating oil for a degreaser most of the time. I use paper towels and cotton swabs and kitchen scrubbies, and if it really is a little bit more nasty, then I'll probably go over to a 4-0 steel wool. But most of the time it's just doing what we're doing here. This was a great time to clean underneath. You can't get there as the seller, just kind of doing a superficial cleaning. You cannot get in here and do that. you have to take the reel apart. So make sure that as long as you're buffing all of this up, you do that. And I'm going to take the time here with a kitchen scrubby and a rod and reel cleaner to do a final cleaning on this, because this reel is a very nice reel overall. The kitchen scrubby will help to just break up some of the film that's on there. And it kind of, it's the old Certs commercial. It's a candy or a breath mint. It's a little bit of both. And this will just clean that up nicely. This is kind of interesting. I'm seeing on this one, these have to be red glue. That's got to be glue. Not glue, I'm sorry, Loctite. And that's actually where the screws come through the bowl for the counterweight. I don't think it comes from the factory that way. I think somebody probably may have removed those screws and put Loctite in there. Maybe they had an issue with the counterweight coming loose. It does happen on these reels. But regardless, we're all cleaned up on that. Okay, that'll go off to the side. I think I'll put the spool right in there. That way I don't lose either one of those pieces. All right, continuing along, what comes next to get this out? Well, the next thing that comes out is this little ramp here. That's your trip lever ramp. And you're going to see it over here. It's going to ride up and it's going to sit in this little T connection. You're going to need a micro screwdriver for that. So let's go grab one. And we'll just take that one out. And again, a very small screw here, so be careful as you're taking this apart. That's off, and now we have that ramp comes off. So that's your ramp, your trip ramp for this. I normally would say take pictures, and I'll say it here. As you start to detach the pieces and parts, take pictures. There are schematics available. This one's a little interesting, right? It's the left-handed, we call it left-handed even though it's a right-hand crank. It's the lefty version of this reel. When you're fishing a spinning reel, you use your dominant hand to hold the pole, because the pole is mounted under, or the reel is mounted under the pole. You use your dominant hand to support the weight of the pole and the reel, and you crank with your opposite one. That's so even though it's a right-handed crank, it's called a lefty reel. Go figure. All right, this is a pin, so you want to grab that and pull that out. Be careful with these. Again, this is a pin, and you're wondering what that pin is doing there. That pin is holding the whole assembly for the bearing in place. So you can pull that out. Here's your hole that pin is going to set in and hold that collar and hold it all down. Clean this. If you're working on the 400 series of this, be very careful. The 400 series has bearings that are free floating in here. The 300 series does not. So you're okay. All right, now you have access to push the main gear through. Let's go do that. Just going to grab a screwdriver and push it through. Again, you want that anti-reverse dog off. And here, if you've taken it off and you haven't figured out how to put it back together again, here's how it sits. You have your lever down below here, your anti-reverse dog, and a spring that sits in this little cavity here. I just worked on a 406. It was kind of interesting. Almost a brand new reel. And what happened was the dog was getting trapped behind the main gear. And all I can think of was that the manufacturer of that particular dog was out of spec. Because as soon as I replaced it with a fresh one, the issue went away. Go figure. Go figure. John had sent that one in. Okay, a little bit around the cap here because it's got that old grease underneath the cover. And now it's really, to service this reel, it's just about clean up. Let's make sure that this is doing the right thing. Comes up and comes back nice and easy. You don't have to remove it. You can if you saw a pile of grease or anything laying in there. That's a good dosing of some fishing reel oil. You put it on, and this is how your anti-reverse dog is going to work. It's going to hit the back click of your main gear. That beak is going to intersect with it. That's your back end. That's what I was saying. When you go to reinstall, make sure that that anti-reverse dog is in the off position. If it's not in the off position, the chances are that the beak is going to come up here somewhere, not intersect with the groove. And when it doesn't intersect with the groove, you trap that in there. All right. So we've taken care of the back end case cleaning. Got one more thing here. I got a pretty dirty paper towel. I guess I'll get my maximum use out of that. We're going to pull through with a bristle brush now and just get rid of any of the old greases that may be in the teeth here. Inspect the teeth as you're doing this. Make sure that they're all uniform and clean. And well, if you see any chips or cracks or bends or something that looks unusual, you probably have already noticed it in the performance of the reel, and it would mean that you need to get a replacement part. There's no way to fix a broken tooth on a gear. All right, use fishing reel grease as you go to reinstall. I'm using Penn Precision Reel Grease here. I also use a artist's brush to apply. It says it works for me. Find out what works for you, and I'll kind of do that. We're going to get some on that back shaft. It's going to go into the bushing in the case. I'm going to get some onto the teeth of the main gear. I'm going to get some into the face here where that oscillation gear is going to go. Simply insert that in. And then we can take care on this one. So this does not have bearings inside of it, so we can do this. Open it up. Wipe it down. A little bit of grease. And you see that there's a very nice machined piece of brass, high quality gear. Do the same thing with the grease on the pinion gear. This is what's clean. I've noticed that I should have told you to make sure that it's clean and check the teeth and do all of that sort of stuff. Some of that comes a little bit more automatic. When you go to install this, that hole is on the upside. I've seen a lot of folks, pieces are in the back end of the box, they put it in like this, and then they can't figure out why the T is not holding when you go to reinstall. It belongs facing up. Find your hole in the case where that's going to come through, right there. And eyeball it when you go back in with this now. You're going to want to do two things. You're going to want to make sure that your main gear is pressed down, and then go ahead and try and align that hole there. I got it partially in there, correct. Align the hole in, and go to your parts tray. Pick out that little ramp piece. Push that all the way in. If you don't push that all the way in, it's going to hit the bottom of the rotor. Next up then is our ramp. And ramp screw. Find the hole in the rotor. It's right there. And reinstall this. Well, if you have any questions on this reel or any reel in particular, maybe you're working on one and you're stuck, maybe you didn't take pictures on something, maybe something popped out of your reel, and you're at a loss in terms of where it belongs or the like. If you want to leave that question in the comments section, I will try to answer that for you. And generally I try to answer those for you at the beginning of the workday. If you try calling, there's a good chance that you're not going to get through, not because it's so busy, it's because, well, when I'm doing videos and I'm working in my shop, I'm not able to answer the phone. All right. A little bit of grease onto the back of the oscillation gear. A little bit of grease onto the face of the planetary gear, or track, the planetary track. It's not a gear. The fuel goalpost goes over the piece and the track sits inside. The grease side comes down. And then you need to rotate this so that it seats flush in that track. Next up then we can install the rotor. You want to get your little keyway, and you don't want to lose it. Find the hole in the pinion gear, set the keyway in, push down. Make sure your table's clear, because if you pop that and it hits and bounces or something, you might have trouble finding it. But that's how it goes. It goes perpendicular, lines facing straight up. Locate the slot in the rotor and then bring it over. If you do not have that keyway in here, this rotor will spin freely. It will not hold. Find your plastic nut. By all means, start this and do as much of this by hand as you can. If you cross-strip this, you're going to rip the threads right out of that plastic nut. Then get your coin or get your wide-brimmed screwdriver, turn it until it stops, and then you can give this whole thing a turn, make sure it's doing what it should be doing. Okay, pretty good condition there. Next up, what we want to do is install the axle shaft. Before we do that, I'm going to take some steel wool. I'm going to polish this up. There's some tarnish on this, and this will just kind of clean it up nicely. Kind of restore that down. So Scott found this one at a flea market, and of course when you go to a flea market you want to test all the pieces of a particular reel as you're using them before you make a bid or a purchase or have a conversation about buying that. You may get burned from time to time, and the more you test, the better off you will be. Alright, just a very light coating onto the axle shaft, because when it passes through this hole, it's got a tight tolerance. It's just going to scrape the excess grease off. Just going to get it started in the hole. Then you want to make sure that you have this set kind of in a parallel structure, because it's going to fit into the groove here. A little bit of grease onto the faceplate in the groove of the crosswind block. And then center the crosswind block on that stud, and then bring your axle shaft through. The flat side, I forgot to mention it, the flat side faces the gear. So when you're bringing this in, make sure that the flat side goes down. Then start sighting the hole. There's going to be two of them. Start sighting the hole on this axle shaft so that you align those two holes with the holes in the block. And we've got that now. And get that double clip. Let's go ahead and put that on. Snap that in place. It's a good time to put the handle on and show you how this reel works. So you're going to notice two things. Let's go over and put the spool back on. You're going to notice two things. You're going to notice that this is a little bit erratic. It's not just going straight up and down. And you're going to notice the same thing on the spool when we turn the handle. So notice how it stays down, kind of a bob and a weave kind of a thing. And that it gets up top and kind of does the same thing, but it's not a straight up and down motion, as you can see. And that's the benefit of that planetary gear. All right, mission accomplished. Put that case cover back on. And we'll just do a little bit more of a cleanup, and we'll call this one a success. Now this is where you can't get under that bowl, as we were saying before. If you're doing a cleaning, you have to have that rotor off in order to get there. Well, very nice all around. One more final turning beautifully. Put that clicker back on now. Music to some of our ears. Make sure that the bad trips. And give it a second chance. Time to take it fishing. I hope you've enjoyed that. If you did, please like it. Again, if you like these types of videos and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. To those who have subscribed, thank you for the effort, and thank you for watching and making the community what it is. To our first responders and essential personnel, fire, police, rescue, and everybody involved in public safety, thank you. And to everyone, keep your tackle fresh, keep the oils and lubricants ready to go fishing. And if you have a problem, don't try to fish through it. Just try to get it serviced as quickly as possible and get it back out there fishing again. This is the Mitchell 307, beautiful reel, flea market find, ready to go fishing again. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thanks for watching.